Let's dig into just a little bit of light controls and light shaping, and then we'll get back. Most of our lights are sort of supplied with some type of a standard reflector. This is a pretty standard reflector that when it's placed on the light, it's funny, light will come out of these things. These are real durable. You don't want to bend these, and you can't. They're really, if you bend up your reflectors, you're doing something wrong, because they're really made to be pretty rigid. When the light comes out of those standard reflectors, whatever the shape is of your head, light follows that path. So like if it's shaped like this, light goes in that kind of a path. And that means that if I'm 10 feet away from this big gray wall and I've got a standard reflector, I'm pretty much evenly illuminating a very large area of that wall. Okay? And then every once in a while you've got this light all going like this, you can put in one of these grids. Now I use grids a lot, and you talk about grids, you'll hear people talk about grids and show grids. I'll put a grid in this standard head, and this is, I'm not sure what the size this one is. They come in 10, 20, 30, and 40 degrees of spread. So I'll just set this guy in this standard head, and wherever that light was coming out and following that pattern, well, once I put a grid in place, it stops following that pattern and it goes like this. And it's right here. So now I can place that light exactly where I want it. I can put a grid on, and from here, it's Amy, right? From here, yeah, Amy Lynn, okay. So from here, I can light just you and not touch these two, Catherine or Lee. Pretty good about that, huh? So that's the beauty of the grid, is I can control where it goes and where it spills and where it doesn't. And so for that reason, a grid is one of the most important tools that I have in my bag. And I use grids almost on every shoot, somewhere, for something. Think about a light that's away from my camera coming back toward my camera. Look at this light. Look in the center portrait of this girl in the middle. Look at those twin accent lights on her cheeks. You see those? Those are two strip lights that are behind her, aimed back right into my lens. They're coming right forward, right? So the reason that it didn't flare my lens is because I had grids on those lights. If I didn't have the grids on the lights, my lenses would have been flared so much, it would have been unusable. So that's why you've got to have grids. And there's some things that we can do with grids, and we'll talk about, and we'll show this week, where we're going to have little bursting effects. We're going to have little bursts of light. And we can put little bursts of color, and we can send splashes of light. From here, if I aim it at that wall at 10 feet away, 10, 12 feet distance here, I'm going to have a pretty concentrated burst of color. But if I walk straight over to the wall and put it right there, I've got a really small, tight, bright light. And then I can skim it like that, and now I've just got a splash of light going in one direction, diagonally. And I can raise it up and tip it down and put a gel on it, and now I've got stage lighting. So we can replicate something that we see on a stage, or on a TV show, or on a movie, or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that we can do with these little guys. Grids are critical for my work. I use them all the time. And they're either called honeycomb grids, grid spots, or spot grids, depending on the brand. And they're expensive, and they're ridiculously expensive. But they are awfully good. and you can get hard grids like this, or you can also get the soft grids that are also known as honeycombs, and they just will Velcro onto your softbox, in the front of your softbox. So we'll talk about the softboxes in a little bit later. But these are really helpful. These reflector heads, these standard heads, some people kind of think of them as throwaway tools, because most people like to get these off and put a softbox on or another tool of some type. But don't discount the importance of the standard, old, traditional, regular head. This will send light to large areas pretty easily. Okay? Now, that also comes in a smaller version with this little guy. And it's very shiny and bright. You can see the difference. So it's all about efficiency with this one. And this one is to send light everywhere. This one's a little bit more bright and a little bit more efficient. And its job, basically, it's got this little small bracket right there for an umbrella. So you put this guy mounted on there, and this is the umbrella holder. You just put the stem from the umbrella, not stem, what's it called? Post? Stem. The long skinny thing. The rod, the stinking rod, the rod. You put the umbrella rod right through that little hole, tighten it down, and you can adjust how far and distant the difference in the of the distance from the head to the center of the umbrella, based on what you want the light to do. If you want the light to really spray over to a large area, then move that umbrella as far out as you can. But if you want to concentrate a little bit, you can move that umbrella closer. Make sense? Pretty cool technique.
Tony, on some of those reflectors, I've seen some that look to be about maybe a foot wide, but they're like 2 or 3 feet deep. They look like a big bucket. What is that doing different from these?
All that does is, without the added control of the grid, it does narrow the beam a little bit and make it a little bit more powerful. So like I would do something like that and use one of those type of reflectors that's a little bit more tubular and a little bit longer. If I was 10 or 20, well, I'll say 20 or 30 feet away from something, I need to light that corner up over there. That corner is really dark. And I'm back over here and there's a car in the shot and I can't get closer with the light because there's a car in the shot. I could put one of those on and back over here and I can power it up and I could fire it and I could hit that corner. I would have a little hard time doing that because there it's going to spray everywhere. And the grid, and the thing you do have to be careful about with the grid is that when you are off axis with your metering with a grid, if I'm off axis, I mean, when the light goes straight out that grid, it's great. But if I'm over here, I've lost two stops of light. It falls off quickly on the grids. It really falls off. It's like, okay, so here, I'm reading, F11, and right there I'm at 8, and over here I'm at 5, 6 already. Well, with this guy, I'm at 11, 11, 11, maybe 8.5. I mean, it really spreads the light out where that really controls it. It really brings that beam into more focus. Okay, any other questions about this? Yeah.
I'm not sure how to articulate this, so I'll do my best. The lining that's inside, one that's super shiny and the one that's more of a matte, that produces a softer light?
It doesn't really make it softer, it makes it more evenly spread.
Evenly spread, okay.
Yeah, and the silver is a little bit, we call it brighter. Right. It's a little bit brighter, which means it's a little bit, it's going to give us a little bit more exposure.
Okay.
But it's also going to be a little bit more specular, meaning it's a little bit more shiny light coming out.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, softness though, we're going to talk a lot about softness tomorrow, especially tomorrow. That's our big day on light quality and talking about controlling that. You guys have any questions? We ready to go? Keep moving? This is great, having a nice cold soft drink. Thank you guys. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these tools. The umbrella. Nobody likes to work with an umbrella, and yet everybody works with umbrellas. Umbrellas are sort of they're a reflective light source, and it's kind of odd because of that. The way that it would work, as I was talking about with the reflector, the umbrella reflector, I would put the umbrella in here like this, of course, tighten it down, and that just mounts on the front of that strobe. So that light fires off and it goes in here and it bounces around inside the bell of the umbrella and it comes out. It also has the ability you can remove this black layer. So this particular one has a twin layer. So if I remove the outside cover, then it's a shoot-through umbrella. So this is a diffused fabric. So I can, instead of then bouncing light into it to light my subject here, then I would turn it around this way and shoot through it and aim it right at my subject. Totally different look. And we're going to go through these this week, and we'll illustrate this and go through all this. And so we'll be able to actually see what we're sort of talking about, make sure that it makes sense. Okay? But the umbrella, interesting thing about umbrellas, if you are in a small studio, you're in your home studio, and you're trying to really learn this craft, and you're trying to really find your shadows and separate your subject from your background, from your accents, from your shadows, and do all this control, you're killing yourself if you're using an umbrella. Because umbrellas send light everywhere. With one umbrella, I could light all 7 of you guys. 1, 2, or 6, or 12, however many there are, I can't see. But one umbrella will light a very, very large area and a very large number of people. You can do a high school football team with 2 umbrellas. Well, you might want to use 3, maybe 4. But it just sends light everywhere, But the drawback is you lose control. You don't have that much control. And I think that's a big challenge, is how it just sends light everywhere. And especially, for me, I always want my backgrounds to be controlled completely separately. In not every case, but in a lot of cases, I want my backgrounds to almost be black while I'm shooting on my subject, so then I can then light them exactly the way I want to light them. And I can't do that if I've got spill going on, or what I call light contamination on the backgrounds. So umbrella is not my choice in the studio too often, but there is one thing that it does brilliantly in the studio, and we're going to do it the day after tomorrow. You're going to love it. We're going to do a full-length fashion shoot with one light, and it's going to be awesome. This is what we're going to use, but not this one. We're going to use one that's a little bit bigger than this. Okay, it's a lot bigger than this. It's 7 feet. It's big, and it's wonderful. But these things they're just great tools. And what's great about the umbrellas is they're not very expensive. And umbrellas, almost any kind of a kit that you use, the umbrellas come with it. So they just fold up pretty easily, and they're exactly what you think they are. A guy that I started working for was a pretty funny guy when I was first starting out, and he always talked about using a black reflector, a black umbrella, and he did a really funny slideshow where he did this photograph of this girl, and he said, one of my friends said I should use a black umbrella, and of course then he showed the next picture, and it looked exactly the same. There was no difference. And he said, I don't know what the problem is. Then he backed up and showed an overall set shot, and he was holding the umbrella over his head like this. So, but they're great tools. They're really great tools. But just be advised, they do send light everywhere. So then we got a couple of other things that we got to talk about here. Let's talk about the dreaded light meter. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on using one yet, but we are going to talk about them a little bit. Interesting thing about light and meters, there are 2 types of light meters. Not brands, but 2 types. They are either what's called a luminance meter or an illuminance meter. And for those of you that are round 2 with me, you know how I am about this. The illuminance meter is also known as the incident meter. And the illuminance meter's definition is it's designed to measure light that strikes or falls on your subject. Okay? And basically, that's the white dome, the sphere. It's designed to measure light that strikes or falls on your subject. The reflective meter, the luminance meter, is designed to measure light that reflects off of or emits from your subject. That's the meter in your camera. That's a reflective meter or spot meter. Okay? That is the reflective or luminance meter that's in your camera. And here's where they differ. The meter that's in your camera, its job is to do one thing and one thing only: replicate 18% gray. It is designed to give you a relative value that's middle gray, a middle tone. If you are using the camera on automatic, and or if you are using your camera and using the meter for your readings through your camera, you are in great shape as long as your subject is of a middle tone. If you are photographing someone dressed in black on a black background, you are going to be sorely disappointed. And if you are shooting automatic in your camera and you are shooting a bride at a wedding and she is, in a white gown, she's, and standing in front of a white curtain with a white tablecloth and she's cutting a white cake, and you're shooting on automatic, you're going to be in deep kimchi. You have an exposure that is going to be off by a stop and a half minimum, maybe 2 stops, too dark. Because it sees all that and tries to make everything that it sees middle gray, which is 2 stops darker than white. That's the way that works. It's 2 stops darker than white. So for me, the importance can't not be expressed deeply enough. People are like, oh yeah, I just use my spot meter. Okay, so that's great as long as you know what you're spotting. If I take a spot reading off of your face, I'm going to miss your exposure because you aren't the same value as an 18% gray card. You're not a middle value. Your denim jacket is. Your red shoes are. Green grass, the average green grass in the park, that's 18%. My hand is 1 stop brighter than 18%. I know that. So I can spot meter off my hand and open one stop and I'll get a dead on exposure. As long as my subject is getting the same light that my hand is getting. There are variations of consistencies of things that are just predictable things that we know their value. You know, like the sunny 16 rule on exposure on a bright sunny day. We know some of those exposures. We can talk about that later. But we get that. But what we have to understand is that in this world of capture and exposure and using meters and making sure that we don't miss, we have to understand that I'm going to go to this board over here and draw out a couple of things. In the world of digital capture, what changed, well, several things changed when we went to digital. But the biggie is that, you know, in the film days, we had a thing called the H&D curve, and that H&D curve was kind of like this. Okay? And we called this the shoulder of the film, and this we called the toe of the film. And so from that distance, from there to there, was kind of like that far. And 18% gray would fit right down in here somewhere in the middle value. And that would be white without detail, and this would be a shadow black without detail. But you can see that we had about that much distance. Okay, so that was I don't want to get too technical here, but that would be the dynamic range of what we could capture with film. Then, bam, introduced digital. Woohoo, digital's here, yay! Our curve changed to fall off quicker and more narrow, right? So the dynamic range changed. And that's why for the first year of digital capture, everybody freaked out because everybody was blowing out their highlights and blocking up their shadows because they didn't know what was going on. We lost the same dynamic distance from white to black. We lost the distance. It became much more less. It became much more less. It became much less of a dynamic contrast range. Our range changed dramatically. Okay, so having said that, now you have to couple that with what are you delivering to your client? Are you delivering slideshows or are you delivering photographs? Are you delivering prints? If you're delivering prints, well, that changes everything again because a reflective print has a different dynamic range than your eye can see, which is a different dynamic range than your camera can capture, right? You have to know. I always tell students to start with the end in mind. What is your use of this photograph? And if it's a print, then you've got to start with the print in mind. And you've got to capture and expose this based on what you're going to do. And here's the way I think about it. Let's put it this way. So we've got an 18% gray, middle gray. Let's just give that a little bit of a shading. So that's middle gray. And then if I open up one stop above that, I'm over here and I get light gray. And if I open up again, I get white with detail. And if I close down over here, another stop, I get dark gray. This is middle gray. I get dark gray. And if I close down another stop over here, I basically get black with detail. Okay? Now, I know this might be a little confusing, but if you think about it on that scale, on that H&D scale, it's kind of like, it kind of goes off like this. 18% gray fits right about there. 18% is the number, and I know this is, most people are going, why do I have to know this? I'm about to tell you why. It's called 18% gray because it is a midpoint, the middle point of a logarithmic curve. Everything in photography works on the exponential. We don't live in the world of an arithmetic where the previous number you add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't live in that world. We live in an exponential, a logarithmic, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Those numbers sound familiar? Right. So that's where we live. So I know that 18% hits there. If I open up one stop, I got right there 36% gray. This is 18% gray. Sorry for my writing. If I open up another stop, bam, it puts me right there at 72% gray. And if I close down one stop, half that distance, that's 9% gray. If I close down that again, I'm way down here at 4.5%. You get the idea. So I've only got this within which that I have to work for the printed page. If you're just capturing and looking and sharing online, that's different. But if you're going to make prints, that's where you better live, because 2 stops above 18%, you're at white without, you're almost out of detail. 2 stops below, you're almost out of detail. And you have to know that if you're using the meter in your camera. That's my point. You can't miss this. You have to know it. If predictable results is anywhere in your vocabulary. You know, I need to know what's going to happen. I can't shoot this picture and look at my camera and go, what happened? Not with the client standing next to me. Okay? Totally confusing, isn't it? Totally weird, isn't it? Where's the girls? Where's the pretty pictures? Sorry. That'll come later, but we got to get through this tough part. This is the challenge of teaching. It's like, you know, I got to spoon feed you some of the technical stuff. We'll get to nice pictures, I promise. But we got to know this stuff so that then when we do take the pictures, we know what's going to happen.
Tony, someone in the chat room did say, I want to thank Tony for the science behind this. Without the science, we're only memorizing what to do. Love the timeline demonstration. So my first studio lighting book that came out in 2000, it was selling on one of the A-word internet companies. And it sold quite well off the bat. And there was like 60 reviews that were so great. I was so proud. And there was one review that was horrible. This guy ripped me to pieces. And he said, he didn't put one diagram in there to tell me where to put my lights. Right. I didn't want to. My job is not to tell you where to put your lights. My job is to give you the science and the foundation behind the craft. You guys figure out where to put the lights. That's none of my business where you put your lights. So I think the science and this all pieces together to really make a pretty important point, which is, you know, it's great if you can take this artistic picture, but it's so bad and so awful if you can't figure out a way to put it on a piece of paper. And if you can't hold the detail. And those sunsets that you shoot across the sound are so spectacular. And yet, and new photographers want to shoot the engagement couple out there or at the beach. And they don't want to use flash or don't know how to use flash. And they don't understand why the subjects look so great and they've lost the brilliance of the sunset. Well, because there are 7 stops apart from someone's back to the sunset to what the exposure is on their face. 7 stops apart. You got to get them closer together somehow, either by darkening that one down or lightening this one up. But you got to do something and get those ranges closer together. I can't do that without a measuring tape. That's what this is to me. I'm a contractor. I am a cabinet maker, and this is my measuring tape, and it sits on my hip. And I cannot go to work unless I can measure my work. You know, we've all done some construction work, and we've all been told, you measure twice, cut once. Measure twice, cut once. Well, I live by the world of measure twice, shoot once. and I'll tell you, that when I finish shooting, I could hand anybody my CF card, and I don't even have to think about those files. They're going to be dead on. These files, these prints that are up here on this wall, not one of those prints did I touch the raw file and adjust. I didn't have to change anything on the raw files of these prints of this girl on the wall. And I'll show you those if you want to see them. You know, people get a little bit freaked out by how much I use a tripod in the studio, because it is kind of in the way sometimes, and you know, you can trip and fall and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I need my hands. And I don't want to walk over to the side of the studio and set my camera down every time I need to go over and talk to my client. So for me, having a tripod makes the most sense, so I can get away from it from time to time. But there is some things that you have to know about a tripod. And most people are smart enough to figure this out. But for the 2 of you that aren't, you know who you are. I'm going to tell you how to set your tripod up. And that is, one leg goes under your lens. One leg under your lens, period. If you do that, then when you have your camera
on your tripod and your tripod set up, and if one leg is under your lens, then you can safely walk up to your camera. See this little hole? Instead of, oh, right, put one leg under your lens. It gives you the stability and it gives you a little entry. You have an entryway right up to your camera. Yes, it's true. But here's the thing. I don't use the tripod because I'm worried about motion when I'm in the studio. Because, again, when I'm using a strobe in the studio, my shutter speed isn't very critical. I can shoot at a 30th, a 60th, a 125th, and I'm going to get pretty much the same picture. Because in that case, when I turn on electronic flash, my exposure is based on the aperture, based off of how much light is hitting my primary subject. So I'm mostly taking meter readings with my meter, going, let's see, that reads F9, that reads F11, F11, great, so I'm shooting at F11. My shutter speed doesn't really matter, unless there's an awful lot of ambient light in the studio, which is not good. You want to get rid of your ambient light as much as you can. But for the most part, let me just say, a tripod is a really good thing to do, I think. I think it's great to use in the studio. I use an Enduro tripod. They're lightweight, they're small. This is my small one. I've got two that are bigger, but this is my small one because it's 3 sections, so it compacts down to here, and I can unscrew the head and it goes in my suitcase. I don't have to check it or it goes in another bag. It stays kind of close with me. So it's a pretty good tool, and I like a ball head for the obvious reasons. This is a pretty costly head. This is a really right stuff head. This is a BH55, it's called. Lifetime warranty, best investment. It's well, let me just say it's stupid expensive, but it's the best investment I ever made for myself. It really is that good. Lifetime warranty and all that stuff, but their precision, and by not having the pan and tilt handles, I don't hit anything. All the control is right there on one big knob. So it's really great.
And Tony, you're comfortable with those ball heads with like a 200 millimeter lens?
Yeah, as long as you mount the lens on there, not the body of the camera. I don't want that weight of that lens hanging out there. I want the central point to be on the lens for a big lens. Yeah. Okay, let's grab some questions.
Fantastic. So first one, and I know that we are going to talk more about light meters as we are going to be using them throughout the next 3 days.
Yep.
But really quick for driver 49, what type of light meter do you use?
Well, I use a Sekonic meter, and for the last 8 years, I've used the Sekonic L758DR, and that's this big guy right here. This guy has been, I don't even know how many exposures this guy's taken. But he's been with me for 8 years, and he's been dropped, he's been kicked. He actually got a little salt water on him once, and he still works somehow. But he's reaching the end of his lifespan, and I know he's going to break down at some point and just say, I'm sorry, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore. And so when that day happens, I have the new 478DR, which is the new touchscreen. And it's just like your iPhone or one of your touchscreen smartphones. Everything is a touchscreen on this guy. Same features, same accuracy, and even a few extra features that are in this one in a smaller package that I'll never use. So, but they're both really, they're so durable. What I always liked about this guy, and they both will work with flash and ambience both. This guy also had a reflective spot meter built in. So I could remove the cap here, take this off of incident, flip it around this way. Now I've got a 1 degree spot meter, and I can shoot through and check my reflective readings. So that was a great feature. I've lost that feature with this, but there is an attachment that'll plug onto this. It's just an added, it's just an accessory that you buy, and this unscrews and the new one mounts on there. So they both do the same thing. What they're designed to do is give you proper exposure, if they're used properly. So,
Which we were going to learn during this class.
we absolutely will.
And for you guys out there on the internet, and Tony as well, Sekonic is giving a $50 instant rebate on the new L478DR. So if you're interested in that, I'd say now's the time to head on over. So
Great.
Tony, I'm going to do just one more question before
Please.
we head out for break.
Please.
And this is from Stefan Daniel Schwartz, and I'm going to ask actually 2 questions. They read that camera meters are calibrated to 12% gray and not closer to 18. Can you comment on that? And Newt Dubai wanted to know, why is the standard 18% and not 25 or 22?
Because 18% is the midpoint on a logarithmic curve between 0 and 100.
Okay.
So that's why it's 18%. I don't know about the 12%. I can't speak to that because I've not heard that before.
Gotcha. Awesome.
I would have to do some serious research on that.
Okay.
So I won't say that's incorrect. I'll say, didn't know that. I better check my tech stuff again. But to my knowledge, it's all based on the 18%, based
Brilliant.
on the middle gray.